Hey guys, welcome to the NRL Round 10 2024 betting trend report video. Here's where we go through a betting preview for all 8 games coming up this weekend. The historical betting trends between each matchup. So who's been covering, what were the odds for their games, have they been going over or under the total, and then comparing it to what the current odds are for the upcoming game. And I'll also go through what I'm looking at betting in each one of these games, or if I'm electing to stay out purely based on statistics, data, and the analytics. Before we get into this weekend's games, though, just want to quickly review last round of the games. 4 went over, 4 went under. So no real change going into this weekend with the over-under records. Still overall in the season, a slight lean towards the under. Day matches have been going under, and night matches have been going over, is what we've been seeing so far this year. Then also last week, home teams covered 4 games, away sides covered 4 games. So no real edge there on either sides. Something we've been seeing a lot of this season. The rounds have been really splitting. So people who always like to back the overs or always back the unders or always back the home teams, that's why it doesn't really work overall long term. Last weekend, though, we saw a number of underdogs win outright. Overall, the underdogs covered 5 of the 8 games. So now this season, underdogs have covered 41 of 72 games, especially home underdogs performing really well, covering 17 of 26 matchups in that situation. The only favorites who covered last weekend were Penrith against the Rabbitohs, winning that game by a big margin. The Bulldogs covered as favorite against the West Tigers, and the Sharks just covered against the Dragons. The closing line came into -9.5, moved down significantly due to the weather. And then the underdogs who won outright last weekend, the Raiders came from behind to beat Manly. Roosters made a mess of the Broncos up at Suncorp. Dolphins eked out a close win as fairly big underdogs against the Cowboys. And then Newcastle won by a try against the New Zealand Warriors. So 4 underdogs winning their games outright. Is how we closed out round number 9. Now, looking ahead to round 10, we start with the Redcliffe Dolphins against the Seagulls. They only met once last season, which was in round 15. And the Seagulls ran out big winners 58-18 as 9.5-point favorites. The total was 45.5 for that game. The Seagulls, this line is only -1.5. And the total's at 46.5. This is a really, really interesting game. Redcliffe get their shot at prime time, so it's definitely a game they're going to be up for. The line has moved quite a bit. I was hoping to get Redcliffe around the +4.5 for this game. That would have been my ideal number if I could have got it. I'm just still trying to decide whether +1.5 or on the head-to-head, which is probably the more likely play, is still a bet. This season, the Seagulls have been a side that I feel like have been a touch overrated each week. They've been getting double-digit lines and not covering, but they've really reined that number in for this game. So there's just a little bit too much movement than I was ideally hoping for, but still leaning towards the Dolphins to win and cover at home. From a total perspective, I'd also slightly lean towards the over. Both sides, top 6 attacking sides and bottom half of the league defensive sides. So that should lean it towards a high scoring game. Penrith versus the Bulldogs. Penrith 14.5-point favorites. This is a matchup where we've seen some crazy lines, kind of like AFL lines in previous seasons. So round 21 last year, Penrith were 30.5-point favorites. The Bulldogs covered that game though. And if we go back to round 12, 2021, Penrith were 37.5-point favorites. They won 30-4. So didn't manage to cover that game either. Bulldogs on the head-to-head were $29. This time around, they're $5.30 as of this morning when I track down these odds. This is a game Penrith should win. Bulldogs are a good defensive side, so that's why we're getting a 39.5-point total. Bulldogs currently ranked 4th in the league in points conceded. Penrith ranked 2nd, so neither side really give that much away. Penrith should win. I'd be very surprised if they were to drop this game. They have won the past 6 against the Bulldogs. 5 of the past 6 head-to-head have been decided by 20 plus points. So with the line at 39.5, it is pretty low. And I wouldn't be surprised if it was to go over that number. This is also a game where you potentially look at the second half to go over. Both sides, these are the top 2 teams in points conceded in the first half. So neither side doesn't give anything away in the first half, especially. So if we're going to see points, we're more likely to see them in the second half. And the past 3 have gone over. So kind of second half over would be the sort of lean in that game. But I think the line is just, the head-to-head line is just a little bit too big to get involved in that. Parramatta against the Broncos. Broncos 8.5-point favorites. Last time they met was at the Gabba in round 24 last season. And Brisbane won that game 54 points to 10. They've won 3 of the past 4 against Parramatta, all of them by fairly big margins. Parramatta picked up the game in round 24 at Suncorp back in 2022, 53 points to 6. So we've really seen some big blowouts. You can also go back to the game in 2021, where Parramatta won 46 to 6. This matchup has a history of blowouts. It has a history of going over the total points line. For this matchup, it's set at 45.5, so a couple points lower than it was last season. Their last match down in New South Wales was this one, round 19. They scored 50 points in that game and went over a 42.5-point line. So the line is definitely a touch higher than what we have seen previously. And the Broncos do get an opportunity to rack up points here against an Eels side ranked 14th in the league, and also concede the second most meters per play. So Brisbane should control this game and should be able to win it. They are without Adam Reynolds, but they have shown they can cover that in previous games without him this season. Obviously injured last week against the Roosters. A pretty good bounce back spot here for the Broncos as well. But the line does suggest that. On statistics, you wouldn't expect the Broncos to be an 8.5-point favorite. This number is probably more around the -6 with what we've seen the sides do this season. Parramatta coming off the bye as well, which means they're going to be well rested coming into this. The away team does have a good record, covering 6 of the past 8. Be more interested in the total going over than a side in that game. Tigers versus the Knights. Newcastle -3.5 here, total 43.5. Newcastle were 13.5-point favorites last time they met. Interestingly, in round 2 last season, the West Tigers were 4.5-point favorites. Newcastle running out 2-point winners. So the Knights have now won and covered the past 4 against the Tigers, and only a small line here. So it shouldn't take much for them to cover it. This game, the total at 43.5, this is one thing I just wanted to quickly touch on. If we go back to the total records so far this season, you'll notice the West Tigers, all 8 of their games have gone under. 7 of the 8 are with them as an underdog. Generally, when this happens, you see their total line just consistently get lower and lower. But at 43.5, it's really not that low. Like, this number hasn't come down much at all. Tigers worst in the league in points for, averaging less than 15 points a game, and the Knights averaging less than 17 points a game, which is ranked 15th in the league. So it's not really a situation where you've got 2, or at least another high-scoring side going up against them that can help push the number over. And Newcastle aren't a bad defensive side. They're top 8 in most categories defensively. Just give up a few too many meters. So the Tigers will get their chances. Whether they can convert is the other thing. I feel like this is a game where either side 1-10, 1-12, or Knights 1-12 is probably the best play. I'll be looking next week what the line goes up, or the total goes up, sorry, for the Tigers Dolphins game. Just surprised they haven't moved this number down of what we've seen in the Tigers games this season. Dragons versus the Rabbitohs. Dragons small favorites here, -2.5. Last time they met, late last season, Rabbitohs were 18.5-point favorites. The Lions moved 20 points since their last meeting. So that's some huge movement there. Dragons did cover that as those 18.5-point underdogs. And they have covered the past 3. Rabbitohs have won 9 of the past 11. So this is a really interesting game, one that could genuinely go either way. Total at 47.5, and 4 of the past 5 have gone under. Both these sides poor in attack, poor in defense. Makes it a really difficult game to bet into. Really got to dig deep for an angle on this one. And for the most part, my general rule is when bad teams are playing each other, it's easy just to stay out of that game. So that's likely how I'm going to play this one. I potentially was interested in the total because both sides, for the most part, leak points. But at 47.5, with their either side's attacking ability, not really keen on it. Wouldn't be surprised if the Dragons were to win and cover, though. I think they're definitely deserving of favoritism in this game. Game of the round is on Saturday night. The top two teams on the ladder, Storm versus Cronulla. The Storm have a really good record, winning 6 of the past 7 against the Sharks and have covered 4 of the past 5. They're only small favorites here, -3.5. I'm pretty sure Pappenhausen is out for the Storm. Really saw them fall apart against the Titans last week once he got injured. Obviously, they're a really well-coached side, and they'll be ready to go here against Cronulla. Last time they met down there, Melbourne won 54 points to 10 as same 3.5 point favorites. Total at 42.5. 5 of the past 8 between these two sides have gone over. Wouldn't be surprised if this was kind of like a defensive grind match. Storm are top 3 defensive side. Sharks are the #1 defensive side so far this season. I could get the Sharks closer to the +6. That would definitely be a bet. Just feel like there's not a ton of value in the 3.5. But Melbourne very hard to beat down in Victoria. So don't want to really take the Sharks to win on the head-to-head. From a total perspective, both sides very strong defensively. Sharks are currently the #1 attacking side, averaging over 27 points a game. And Melbourne not that far behind. So don't really love a play either side on the total here, but I'm looking for a better number there on the Sharks. Also, either team wants 10, I feel like is a good play in this game. Roosters versus the Warriors. Roosters big favorites here, -10.5. New Zealand's just in horrible form, and now they face a side they've lost the last 7 games against. If you look through the Warriors' recent games, they've been losing against bad teams and teams they should be winning against. So kind of wheels have really fallen off. Roosters should win this game if they hold form from what they did last week. They have a really good record. They shut out New Zealand in New Zealand last season, 14 points to 0. When they were last playing in Sydney, the Roosters were 12.5 point favorites. Feel like with a 10.5 point line, still probably not enough if both sides hold their recent form. Therefore, if I had to pick a side for this game, I'd be leaning towards the Roosters -10.5. This matchup's also been a big under game historically. 8 of the past 10 head-to-head have gone under. 42.5, higher than their previous matchup, but lower than what it was last time in Sydney at 45.5. I think Warriors to go under their team total would be the way you would kind of lean. They haven't scored over 14 points in the last 5 against the Roosters. And so I feel like with a team total around the 16 to the 18, if we get under 18.5, that's something else I'd be really keen on in this game. Then the Titans versus Cowboys. Cowboys at -3.5. Total at 48.5. Cowboys have won 3 of the past 4. This is a matchup where the home team has completely dominated. They've covered 16 of the past 21 head-to-head. This matchup, I am pretty interested in the Titans. They've really turned a corner the past 3 to 4 weeks. Obviously only winning the 1 game, but they've really been staying in there in matches and not just falling apart like they were earlier on in the season. And the Cowboys, like preseason, Cowboys and the Rabbitohs were the 2 teams I wanted to fade this year. Really done well fading the Rabbitohs. Cowboys, I've been able to pick a few spots. They probably overperformed slightly at home, but they've definitely been underperforming on the road, which they are here. So Titans +3.5. Like +4.5 or even +6.5. I'll definitely be on the hunt for a line on the Titans here at +4.5, or even any higher if I could get that, because I think the Titans definitely hang around in this game and are a chance of winning it. So that's likely the play I'll be going with. Interesting, 8 of the past 10 between these two sides have gone under, and we've got a 48.5 point total. Titans defense. Both sides actually are fairly even defensively. Titans conceding just over 30 points a game. Cowboys conceding just over 27 points a game. Both bottom 4 sides overall in the league. Both bottom 3 defenses in the league. So this is a game where, feel like if you need points, you'll be able to get them. Leaning towards the Titans at the plus is how I'm looking for that game. So I'll quickly recap. First game, looking towards the Dolphins on the head-to-head to win as the underdog. Panthers, Bulldogs, looking at the over in the second half. Eels versus Broncos, probably a game I'm leaning towards staying out of, but interested in the over slightly. Tigers versus the Knights. Bit of an ugly game here and one that I'm most likely staying out of. Dragons versus Rabbitohs. Lean towards the Dragons, but no real confidence on that game. Storm Sharks. Leaning either team 1-10, 1-12, or the Sharks if we can get a slightly better number. Roosters, Warriors. Interested in the Roosters at the line -10.5, and the Warriors team total to go under if we can get around the 18 mark. And then Titans versus Cowboys. Interested in the Titans at the plus, looking for a 4.5 or greater. I'll be posting videos later in the week going through the matchups more in depth and going through my exact bets. These are the stats that we go through looking at in the bet finders for every game, because the way I learned to bet back about 10 years ago was not betting on my gut feelings, not betting on, what the public opinion is about sides, because you'll notice like a lot of the time there's big overreactions from week to week with teams. And that's kind of what we're seeing with the Dolphins Seagulls line that I spoke about in the beginning. Like there's been a big overreaction with their performances from last week compared to what we've seen previously. And sometimes you can take advantage of that. Other times it's not as ideal. By being able to break down games, see where teams' strengths are, see where their weaknesses are, and look to place your bets to take advantage of those situations. So it's not just about looking at, what their overall season stats are. It's like, what's their recent form been? How are they performing? Have they, are their line breaks down on recent weeks? Are they missing a lot more tackles over recent weeks? And that's why I created the Bet Finder, so we can look at this information. And I've been using it personally for the last 10 years. And last week was the first week that I officially made it available to everyone, not just for the NRL, but for the AFL and every sport that I'm betting on. So that's all your American sports. I'm betting on those every day during the season, and also all the soccer leagues around the world. So if you're interested in using statistics to level up your betting, start making smarter bets every single time, then definitely check it out. I'll put the link in the description so you can have a look. Also with that, you get all my bets every single week, everything I'm personally betting on. But with the main goal of sharing this is to help everyone absolutely level up their betting. I've had a lot of issues with the betting companies over the years with limiting accounts, closing accounts, getting banned, all that kind of stuff. And sharing this of what I've used over the past 10 years, maybe even slightly longer now. I think I first started creating it at the end of 2013. So over the years kind of evolved. But by using this is the reason I've been able to do this full time for over a decade. So passing this on to you guys, letting you guys use it, so then you can start really making good profits off these betting companies as well.